What I'm going to talk about this evening, you're not going to see on CBS or NBC. It's not talked about in the corporate media, and it's not talked about very much in the halls of Congress. But that is that there is a war that has been waged over the last 50 years, and being waged today by the ruling class and the 1% and the corporate world against the needs of working families throughout this country. And it's time we put that on the table. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. They cannot have it all. And that's what... So here is the reality. Okay, you're not going to hear it much, but this is the truth. We have an economy today in which the very, very wealthy are becoming much richer, while 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck. And we have more income and wealth inequality in America today than we have ever had in the history of our country. Of course, there's always been rich and poor. That's nothing new. But the degree, the disparity between those on the top and the middle class and lower income people has never been wide. And it's not only income and wealth inequality. What we're seeing now is more concentration of ownership on the part of corporate America. You know, people talk, well, this is a country of small business people, of entrepreneurs. Yeah, but the truth is that in every major sector, whether it's agriculture, whether it's financial services, whether it is media, whether it's transportation, look at who controls that sector. You'll find 3, 4, 5 major corporations making record-breaking profits, raising their prices, who control what goes on. More concentration of ownership than we have ever had. When you look at what's going on in America today, we have a situation in which, if you can believe it, CEOs of major corporations are making 350 times what their workers are making. Got that? I mean, talk about greed. These guys, and this is, I honest to God don't really understand. These guys have billions of dollars, and they're willing to shut down plants here in Wisconsin, to move to Mexico, despite making record-breaking profits, so they can make even more money. They want to elect people who will give them even more tax breaks rather than paying their fair share of taxes. Their greed is unprecedented. And the future of this country, to my mind, the most important issue is whether we have the courage and the ability to bring our people together, the working people of this country, to say to these people on top, enough is enough. This country belongs to all of us. I want to tell you something else. I think, and you know, we all know there is a lot of anger throughout this country. In many ways, Trump and his people have that anger. And you know what? People should be angry, but they shouldn't get angry at the wrong people for the wrong reason. They should get angry at the right people for the right reason. But what we have today, this is really quite unbelievable. I want you to, over the last 50 years, 50 years, the world has changed a whole lot. Every worker in America today is far more productive because they have new technology than was the case 50 years ago. And yet, despite the huge increase in worker productivity, the average American worker in real inflation accounted for dollars is making $40 a week less than he or she did 50 years ago. Can you believe that? Yes. That is the real. That's why people are angry. They said, I'm working like hell. You know, I'm working 50, 60 hours a week. I'm working day after day. And I'm going nowhere in a hurry. And I'm worried that my kids are going to be in even worse shape than I'm in. And now, on top of all of that, we're looking at artificial intelligence, we're looking at robotics, so that many of the jobs that you guys have today are not going to be here in 10 years from now. And who's going to benefit? Who's going to benefit from that technology? Are they going to simply throw workers out of the street and make even more money? Or are we going to use that technology to benefit the working class of this country? And that is why many people are now beginning to talk appropriately about a 32-hour work week with no loss in pay. If there is technology that makes you a better worker, I want you to benefit from it, not just the CEO of some large corporation. Again, when you're not going to see on the TV or hear from most politicians, is that in these last 50 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth. You know, many of the corporate people say, oh, Bernie Sanders and these others, they want to redistribute wealth. Well, you're right, I do. Unfortunately, what we have had over the last 50 years is a redistribution of wealth which has gone in exactly the wrong direction. According to the Rand Corporation, which is not a particularly progressive group, they estimate that since 1975, get this, over $50 trillion in wealth has been redistributed from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. Got it? That's why wages are lower today than they were 50 years ago. That's why you have this massive income and wealth inequality. That's why CEOs make 350 times from their workers. And when we talk about corporate greed, the president does talk about corporate greed. Understand this. A significant part of the inflation that we are seeing has everything to do with corporate greed. All right? You go to the supermarket, you go to the grocery store, you see food prices high. Check out the record-breaking profits taking place in the food industry. Yep. Gas prices are high. See how ExxonMobil and these other large corporations are doing. Yep. In the country today, it's not only corporate greed, but we have got to finally deal with some of the long-term systemic crises facing this country. The United States of America today is the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. All right? I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. I live in Burlington, go north 50 miles here in Canada. Somehow or another, they have done what virtually every other industrialized country has done. They guarantee health care to all people, and they spend 50% per person of what we spend. All right? Our system is spending $13,000 a year for every man, woman, and child. You add all of our health care, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, $13,000. That is unsustainable. The function of the current healthcare system is what? Profit. You got it. So the good news is that if you are the head of an insurance company, you're making record-breaking profits. Absolutely. If you're the head of a pharmaceutical company, you're making record-breaking profits. The pharmaceutical industry made over $110 billion in profits last year. Meanwhile, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and 1 out of 4 Americans, believe it or not, can't afford to get the prescriptions written by their doctors filled. Can't afford it. I made a trip to Canada a couple of years ago from Detroit, dealing with insulin. We went to Windsor, Ontario. A bunch of people who have diabetes. Went to Windsor, Ontario. We bought the same exact product, not a generic, for 1/10 of the price. So as a nation, we have got to do a couple of things. We have got to understand that health care is a human right, not a privilege. that whether you're rich or poor, young or old, urban or rural, you have the human right to go to any doctor you want, and if you get sick, go up to the hospital and not worry about being bankrupt when you come out of the hospital. I have done town meetings, and it breaks the heart. I've done town meetings, and I've heard people talk, stand up, and talk about ending up in the hospital, coming out with $100,000 in debt, going bankrupt. We have 500,000 people in this country go bankrupt because of medically related illnesses. Can you imagine that? People dealing with cancer, dealing with heart disease. You've got to worry about getting well, not whether your family is going bankrupt. So the fight that we have got to wage is to develop a cost-effective healthcare system with the goal of providing healthcare to every man, woman, and child. That's not a radical idea that exists in virtually every other country on earth. We've got to take on the insurance companies. We've got to take on the drug companies. That is what we've got to do. I'm the chairman of the committee that deals with a lot of this stuff, so I go over it. I just wanted to bounce it off you. And we don't talk about this very much. You know, when you talk about what is our goal as a society, at the end of the day, what do we want? And it seems to me what we want is we want our people to live long, healthy, and productive lives. Is that what we want? Yeah. That's about it. Everybody wants to live a long life. You don't want to be in a wheelchair. You want to be active. You want to be, productive. That's what people want. How many of you know that despite spending twice as much per capita on health care, our life expectancy, how long we live, is lower than virtually every other major country? Do you know that? Yeah. And I want to tell you something else which is never discussed. And this is really quite outrageous and tells you where we are as a nation. If you are wealthy, your life expectancy in America is about equivalent to what it is in many of the European countries. If you're working class or poor, your life expectancy is 10 to 15 years lower. In other words, just think about that. That being in the working class or being poor in America is a death sentence. You're dying 10 years earlier than somebody else. And by the way, it has everything to do with health care, but it is even more than that. And we don't talk about this. It is the incredible stress that working class families are living under right now. And COVID, of course, exacerbated that stress. But right now, you've got a mental health crisis throughout America. People are struggling. You have people come down with all kinds of illnesses. You know what it means when you're on your mind? You got to worry about how you're going to feed your kids, whether you're going to pay the rent, whether you're going to do all of those, whether you're going to keep your job, whether you're going to be able to make ends meet. That stress kills people. And think about what it means to a country. If we had decent wages for our workers, if health care was a human right, if we didn't have to worry about whether we could afford to send our kids to higher education or get them the training they need to get good jobs. What a burden that would be taken off our shoulders. People could breathe, they could live, and not have to deal with the stress they're dealing with right now. One of the exciting things that is happening, and I'm delighted to be in Union Hall to make this point. One of the really exciting things that is happening in America today is we're seeing a rebirth and a revitalization and a rejuvenation of the trade union movement in America. And that is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, if you're in a union, you're going to earn better wages and benefits. That in itself is very important. But equally important, if we are talking about the great political crisis that we have and how we take on the big money interest, what other entity in America has the organizational capability to do it other than a united trade union movement? So what we need to take on the 1% and all of their money, and their money is unlimited, is we need to grow the trade union movement. And one of the things that I am working very hard on is that at a time when millions of workers want to join unions, they are held back because their bosses are intimidating them, threatening to fire them, taking them in back rooms, and, giving them anti-union lectures. And that is why it's imperative that we pass the PRO Act, which ends all that intimidation. And if workers know they can go forward and join a union without being fired, without being threatened that their company is going to move to China or Mexico, you're going to see a real growth in the trade union movement, and we desperately need that. Now, the other thing that we need is to end the disgrace in this country of millions of workers working for starvation wages. And I'm embarrassed as a United States Senator, I'm embarrassed to tell you that the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And we're trying. I brought a bill to the floor 2 years ago, not one. Whenever you hear that Republicans tell you they're the party of the working class, we couldn't get one Republican in the Senate to vote to raise the minimum wage to a mere $15 an hour. Not one. We've got to raise that minimum wage, in my view, to at least $17 an hour. And if as a nation we are going to be competitive, and if our kids are going to have decent jobs, we really have got to make not only public colleges and universities tuition free, we have got to give young people who are good with their hands, who want to be electricians, who want to be plumbers, the opportunity to get that training without having to worry about coming up with thousands of dollars to do that. So in my state of Vermont, I worked really hard to bring in several $1 billion to rebuild our infrastructure. We have a lot of problems in Vermont. And you know what? In Vermont right now, we do not have the skilled workforce to rebuild our infrastructure. With our projects are slowed down because we don't have those workers. So you got millions of young people who are great with their hands. They want that training. You want to go out and work. And by the way, you work as a plumber, electrician, or welder today, you're going to make pretty good money. And we want to give those young people the opportunity to do that. Let's get them the training. Let us rebuild this country. Sick and tired, and I'm seeing it, I've seen it over the years. One of the reasons that the working class is struggling is that as a result of disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China, that were written by these corporations who said, wouldn't it be great if we had free trade? We could throw American workers out on the streets, we could go to low-wage countries, we could hire people for 50 cents an hour, wouldn't that be great? And that's exactly what they did. Thousands of factories in America were shut down. And I'm happy to tell you that Biden is playing with the role, beginning to rebuild manufacturing in America. And I will tell to those CEOs, if I have anything to say about it, you ain't going to China, you ain't going to Mexico, you rebuild here in the United States of America. The struggle that we're waging now is not only an economic struggle to create a government and policies that work for working people. We're also in the midst of a great struggle within our political system. So let me be frank with you. It's not only that our economy is rigged to benefit the very wealthy, we have a political system which is corrupt, which also benefits the very rich. So it is true, absolutely, that one of the reasons we should be voting against Donald Trump is he is working day and night to undermine American democracy. That's true. But there is another factor that is above and beyond Trump. And that is that as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, billionaires in to elect the candidates who represent their interests or defeat the candidates who stand up for the working class. And just the other day, in New York, there was a race with a really fine young man, very progressive, stands with the working class, supported by a number of unions. In the low-income part, working class part of his district, he got 84% of the vote. People supported. But special interest PACs spent $23 million in total, PACs and others. He spent $3 million. And when you're up against $23 million versus $3 million, you're going to lose in almost every time, and he loses. So what we have got to do is bring change to a corrupt campaign finance system. What democracy is about is one person, one vote. You disagree with me? That's great. Vote against me. We'll have a debate over the ideas. Maybe I win, maybe you win. That's called democracy. Democracy is not about who are the billionaires getting endless amounts of money, flooding the airwaves with lies, and defeating me. That's not democracy. That is oligarchy. Brothers and sisters, add all of that stuff up. We are in a pivotal moment in American history. These are tough times, and I fully understand it. Get into the war in Gaza, we can talk about that too. But I can understand why many people turn off the TV. And by the way, they are. And people don't want to look at the television, they want to hear about wars, they want to hear about climate change, they want to hear about violence, they don't want to hear about the vitriol in the political system right now, people yelling and screaming at each other. They don't hear it. They're fine. But what I have to say to you, in this very difficult moment in American history, despair is not an option. And it's not just for us. It's for our kids and future generations. If we don't get our act together, the planet is going to get warmer, and our kids will have a more and more difficult time living healthy lives. If we don't get our act together, we're going to lose our democracy. This is democracy. People coming together to talk about issues. I love it. I love the clash of ideas. That is a beautiful thing. We should be proud of that. We can lose that. Women can lose the ability to control their own lives. So what I'm begging of you all, not just in this election, is we cannot give up on our country. The ideas that we believe, that we should have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. I came from Abraham Lincoln and Gettysburg. That's what most Americans believe. They don't believe we should have a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. So that's the moment in history that we are living in. And just as in past times, the American people have come together. And one of the other things I will say, on all the ideas that I've talked about, they are not, despite what some may say, not far-left ideas. You ask the average American, might be Republican, Independent, Democrat, healthcare, are you all right? Yeah, it is. Should we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? Yeah, we should. Should we address climate change so our kids can live decent lives? Yeah, we should. Should we cut military spending and maybe protect the most vulnerable people in this country? Yeah, we should. These are not radical ideas. This is what the American people believe. Now, the way they defeat us is they divide us up. They always have. And that is they divide us up by the color of our skin, where we were born, our sexual orientation, etc. And our job is to bring our people to understanding that in this room, elsewhere, there are differences of opinion. So what? That's called democracy. You're entitled to have a different point of view. But on the basic issues of whether or not we have a government that stands with the ordinary American, the working class of this country, or stands with the billionaire, on that issue, the American people are totally with us. So I want you to know the ideas we're talking about are not radical. That what the American people want. Let's stand together. Let's bring our people together. Let's keep our eyes on the prize. Let's win in November. Let's transform this country and make it the kind of nation you and I know that it can become. Thank you all very much. got a mic? Where's the mic? All right. Socrates has the mic, so one right here. Where's the other one? Okay, good. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here to see you and to hear you for myself. I have a problem with, like you said, turn off the TV because I don't really believe any of it. I got to hear it from the horse's mouth. So thank you for speaking your mind. And
You suggesting that I'm a horse. I won't take that person.
There's some pretty good horses out there. So
You're a thoroughbred.
what I really am concerned about as an aging individual is Social Security.
Good.
And you know what? I believe that in this room probably there's somebody who has a mathematical formula to solve Social Security. I don't believe it really isn't that hard, although I'm
It is not that hard.
I would just like to hear how you would take that
Oh,
on.
thank you for the question.
Here's the
That's not even a planted question. Here's the story. First of all, back it up. I didn't know this. We did a hearing on my committee on retirement issues. Turns out I didn't know this. That 25% of senior citizens in America are living on $15,000 or less. You know that? Okay. Half of seniors are living on $30,000 or less. Frankly, I don't know. When your seniors have additional expenses, healthcare, etc., I don't know how you make it on $15,000 or $30,000.
Try going to a nursing home where you have to be impoverished before you can receive
That's right.
care.
I know. Right. All right. So what's the solution? Now, Social Security is funded by you and by me. We put money into the Social Security Trust Fund. Well, Republicans will tell you Social Security is going broke in a certain number of years, which happens not to be true because most of the money comes in every day. But the Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted in a certain period of time. That's true. What is the answer? Well, it ain't hard, and I have legislation to do just that. If somebody in America makes $16 million a year, and there are many people who do, and somebody makes about $160,000 a year, okay? Who pays more into the Social Security Trust Fund? Anybody know?
$160,000.
Very simple. Because there is a cap on Social Security taxes at about $165,000. So if you make more than that, you don't pay any more than somebody making $165,000. If we lift that cap and demand that the wealthiest people start paying their fair share, we can do two things. Number one, we can rather significantly raise Social Security benefits for all those on Social Security. Number two, we can extend the solvency of Social Security for 75 years. That's the solution. In heart. Thank you for asking. So anyone who turns on the TV and says, oh, we got to cut so Republicans around that they want to cut Social Security. That's what they want to do. And Medicare and Medicaid. Don't believe them. There's an easy fix to that problem, but it will require, in fairness and honesty, the wealthiest people in this country to finally start paying their fair share of taxes. So, other questions? All right, gentleman right over there.
Thanks, Senator Sanders, for being here. I have a question for you. Oh, thank you for being here, Senator. I have a question for you. Actually, I wondered if you might have a solution for some thoughts. You know, there was a time in this country where the top 10% or even the 1%, people like Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, who you mentioned, they would bear the burden. They would share in things that would happen, like military service, things of that nature. And it seems like now people, and I'm part of the 10%. A lot of my brethren in that 10% or higher don't share in the burden. They don't teach their kids, like I taught my son who's the purple shirt over there, to have military service. He's a Bernie bro. He's in the Wisconsin National Guard. Well, what happened to that? What's the solution? Because if they did that, we wouldn't have a lot of...
You're asking a very profound question, and I don't know the total answer. I think you're right in your analysis. It's very deep. It has to do, I think, whether we believe that we are a nation of all of the people, and my job as a citizen is to care about you. I have to worry about whether she and her family can afford Social Security. I have to worry about who is serving in the military and what kind of wars they are asked to fight for. I have to worry about whether your kid gets a good public education. You've got to worry about my family. And if my family has problems, I want you to be concerned about me. It's whether we are all in it together. I mean, in a sense. Whether we care about each other. If we care about each other, we come out okay. But the other philosophy says, and this is what the right-wing philosophy is largely about, is, hey, there is no such thing as a society. My job is not to worry about you. Your job is not to worry about me. We're all in it alone and for ourselves. And what your job is, go out and make as much money as you can and step on anybody who you have to in order to get what you want to make more money. And in many ways, Trump as an individual is a reflection of that. Guy was sued thousands of times in his business career. You know, lies, make contracts, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is to make as much money as you can. And if you have to cut Social Security, you have to throw people out on the street, doesn't matter. Not my concern. So all I'm worried about is number one. That's one way. So there are two ways of looking at the world. And that's the answer. The answer is whether we are in it together. I think that at the end of the day, to live a human life, I am stronger and a better person when I worry about your family. When I'm concerned about you, when you're concerned about me. And if all I'm concerned about is making another $1 billion, that's a pretty miserable and selfish life. But that is what I think the division is that's going on right now. Okay, maybe a question in the back there. I see a gentleman way in the back in front of the camera. We have a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. It's a pleasure to have you down here in my local meeting with my brothers and sisters. And I've spent a tremendous career in this local since 1995. I was able to travel this nation working in the nuclear industry. I've worked with all union trades. Okay, I help educate down here. I support through my votes labor and union endeavors in America. I support your social ideas in medicine, schooling, as well as flat taxes and reform. But I have one question. There are multiple things that union people, our people, my people, that I rub elbows with daily at break tables, at get-togethers. It's one thing. Why can't the left leave our Second Amendment alone? If that was the case, you would have every labor person in America. Because when I travel this nation, and I'm not a right-wing gun nut, but I am a Second Amendment supporter, okay? But at that, when I sit and I talk to union people throughout this nation,
right.
You know what I hear all the time? If it wasn't for the gun stuff, I'd be supporting Democrats. So how do we do this? How do we?
Thank you for raising the issue.
You used to have, prior to 2020, you were a good point. So how do we bridge that gap?
Good. All right. First of all, let's talk about gun control. There is some right-wing rhetoric going around, which is just untrue, and I'm sure you know that. Democrats, Joe Biden wants to take away every gun in America. That's total BS. You know.
Right.
Okay. All right, so here's the problem that we have, and what's happened over the last years. And I come from a state, by the way, which is more rural than Wisconsin. It is a state where in the fall, you got a lot of husbands, wives, kids go out hunting, people do a lot of autocrats, a lot of guns in my state. So here's the dilemma that we have. All of you know, and by the way, if you talk to kids, they will tell you this. I don't have to. We have had some horrible, horrible situations in schools, and it's almost so unthinkable. You think about Sandy Hook and all that stuff. It's almost unimaginable what happens. So you got that. You got people in this country who have records of violence, beating up their wives and their girlfriends. I went out trying to get an AK-47. What do you do? So I think what most people agree with is what, for want of a better term, we want sensible gun control. We want to keep guns out of the hands. It's just a personal story. I mean, it's kind of a personal story. my office in Burlington, Vermont, a couple of months ago, what can I say? A person walked up, I had 7 people in the office at the time, guy lights fire with the incendiary to the rug outside, door catches on fire. If the water system had not worked well, I hesitate to even think what a tragedy would have been for the people. Could have been trapped in my office. 7 people, it's another office down the road. Turns out they did an investigation. I can't say more about it. This guy is still being investigated. He's in jail right now. He was stopped at one point with an AK-47 in his car. Why does a guy like that have an AK-47? What might he do? So that's the dilemma that honest people have. So from my perspective, coming from a hunting state, say where everybody has guns, do I want to take over people's guns? Absolutely not. Absolutely right. I eat meat, people. You go shoot me a deal, invite me to dinner, I'm coming. But what we do need to do, and I'll tell you this, and it's almost a painful thing to talk about. There was an incident in Vermont that some geniuses do, some horrible people, where they put out social media and they say, there is a gunman in your school, or in 3 schools in Vermont. I don't know, I hope to God that doesn't happen here in this country. But it's happening around the country. And kids get terrified. Then teachers go through all the drills. I have grandchildren who go there hiding under the deck, doing all these things. So this is what we are dealing with. And I would appreciate that people understand that nobody, I know, maybe this one, no sensible person wants to ban guns, they want to take guns away from people who are law-abiding. But I think we do have to address this terrible issue of gun violence. So that's my answer to your question. You guys are 3 for 3. Great questions. All right, what else we got? All right, we got you. Okay.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. My name is Scott Burchett. I come from the Menominee tribe. I live on the reservation, and there we are facing a epidemic opioid crisis. And I just want to know, what do you think the answers are for facing this crisis?
Everybody hear what Scott was saying?
Yes.
He's talking about an opioid epidemic in his tribe. Your tribe is?
Menominee.
Let me answer in 2 ways. Number one, and you run for president, you learn a lot. Around the country, and I had the opportunity to go to many reservations and meet the tribal leaders around the country. And we owe the Native American people kind of a debt that we can never repay. And that is an historical reality. Settlers did to the Native Americans was terrible. And right now, the truth is that, we can and should be doing. There are not a whole lot of people on reservations. It is not an expensive proposition to get you the quality health care and education that you need, and in many cases, we're not doing that. In terms of the opioid epidemic, what I have to say is that it is not just a Native American issue. In my state, in my city, I'm seeing people shooting up on the streets. We have lost, I think about 100,000 people to overdoses. Talk to police officers, I'll tell you it's a major issue. So what we have got to do is we've got to do a better job in understanding why people are turning to drugs to escape the pain of their lives. That ain't easy stuff. Second of all, we need treatment centers in a way that we don't have them now. We need the kind of counseling that people who are addicted need to get off. Getting off of that stuff is not easy. Addiction is a terrible disease. So we need to pay a lot more attention, and certainly on Native American reservations. So thank you for the question. All right, maybe one more. I see one more here.
Hi. Could you please speak about the 2 wars going on right now and how the United States involvement is?
Yes. Let me start with the war that began first, and it is really depressing. Let me back up and say, one might have thought that after thousands of years of warfare, people killing other people, that maybe the human race might have figured out a better way to solve problems than around killing each other. I'm not on these committees, but I, was involved a little bit in, dealing with what went on in Ukraine. And I think the general belief about Ukraine is that in Putin, you have an autocrat who wants to reclaim the glory of the old Soviet Union and its territory, or maybe even further back in Russian history where they controlled a lot of territory. And I know that, because I talked to people who were doing these things, the truth is the Biden administration tried to do everything that it could to prevent that war. I mean, there was an argument that Putin felt he had to do because NATO was encroaching on him and so forth. That could have been dealt with. The war was initiated by Putin for his own imperialistic efforts, and the people of Ukraine are suffering, and I have supported effort to protect the people of Ukraine. I'm not anxious to spend a lot of money on it, but I think if Putin is victorious there, he has sights on other areas. Now, let me go to another area where let me just talk about another war, which I have been more deeply involved in. And let me just be very brief on it. On October 7th, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, invaded Israel and in very disgusting ways killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, took over 200 people captive. Israel, in my view, like any other country on earth, had the right to defend itself and to go after Hamas. That happened in our country, that's what we do in any other country. But what this right-wing extremist Netanyahu government did not and does not have the right to do is to go to war against the entire Palestinian people. Just another war. Somebody was leading the effort against this war in the Senate. I know a little bit about it. What's going on right now? I want you all to hear this. This is an area where I disagree very strongly with the Biden administration. All right? What's going on right now is that the Netanyahu government has killed some 35, at last count, no, I beg your pardon, something like 37,000 people. This is an area of 2.2 million people, 37,000 dead, over 80,000 wounded, 60% of whom are women, children, and the elderly. Right? These are not Hamas fighters. Women, children, and the elderly. 1.8 million people have been displaced from their homes. That's over 75% are driven out of their homes. Something like 70% of the homes, the housing units in Gaza, have been either damaged or destroyed. So I don't know what these people are going to return to. The infrastructure of Gaza has been destroyed. Water systems gone. There is no electricity today in Gaza despite soaring heats. The healthcare system has been systematically destroyed. There are 12 universities in Gaza. Every single one of them has been bombed, including many other schools for young kids. So the children of Gaza who are going through hell right now have no education. And then on top of all of that, what Netanyahu has done is blocked humanitarian aid coming in. There are thousands of children right now who are suffering from malnutrition, and the situation may get even worse, and we're talking about starvation. And what is particularly galling to me, and I think most Americans, whether you're Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, is we are to a significant degree funding Netanyahu's war. And I have done my best to lead the effort to say not another nickel to Netanyahu to kill the children of Gaza. talked at length to the president, to Trent, to every one of his advisors here. If you were to ask me why, I honestly cannot give you an answer. They are wrong on this issue. And we're doing our best. I want you all to know, not just me, many members of Congress are doing their best to change this policy. All right, maybe one last question. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Mr. Sanders.
Always
Sorry. Okay, hi, Mr. Sanders. I'm a cybersecurity student here, and I'm sure you've heard about the rise of like AI and deepfakes and stuff, especially deepfake pornography, which is really scary to think about and has affected even school children, which is horrible. And as well as like troll farms on Twitter and whatnot, it's really scary stuff. So I feel like there's a huge, uncurbed, unhindered misinformation campaign from God knows where, like even here. And I'm really curious as to how you think the November will go.
Well, we're trying, it's an area that we are trying to bring about some success. You touched on a huge issue. Artificial intelligence is going to be transformative. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the economy, I want workers to benefit from that change, not just the owners of that technology. And you're raising another issue. The Surgeon General, a guy named Vivek Murthy. Anyone ever heard of Murthy? Surgeon, he's doing a really good job. He's a good guy. And he just did an op-ed in the New York Times where he thinks that children, that we've got to regulate phones out of schools, and that we have got to be a lot more vigilant as parents to our kids' utilization of these phones. All right? Does that make sense to people? All right. Thank you for raising that. Let me ask parents in the room, because I want to learn from you. What are you experiencing with your own kids? How are you dealing with the internet, all the stuff that's out there? Yes, stand up, tell us. Is that your daughter right next to you? All right. How are you doing? Get a mic, please. How are you doing?
Thank you. She's embarrassing.
She's embarrassing.
We do not allow social media or phones or anything despite her begging for it. In the past, we actually experienced a bullying ring after school. She's only 10, so this was last year when she was 9. And it was organized 100% through social media and through phones. And when we ended up finding out who was behind it, the police confiscated this little girl's phone. And she had rallied up all these girls to pick on my daughter. And there were death threats. There was violence. It was really scary. And it was only made possible because these girls had these cell phones that they were using at night after their parents went to bed.
Anybody else want to, as a parent, talk about how you're dealing with, way in the back there. No.
Thank you for being here, Senator. So I have a 13-year-old who was recently found as transgender. There was some cyberbullying that happened at their school district that got to the point where we had to change schools. And we can police cell phone use all we want, we can police social media use all we want, and we're still not perfect. So social media, it's scary as a parent, and it's scary, raising a child who is transgender, who in this country will probably not be accepted. So we just try to keep our child outside, go play with friends, do stuff around the homestead, and do everything we can to limit the screen time.
Okay, thank you very much. Parents dealing with, I got her hand way back, ma'am, stand up. Yeah.
I'm not a parent, but one of your issues was AI and the role it plays in this burgeoning, out-of-control pornography stuff. And as a young woman, and as those of us who are raising young women, that's what I want to hear is Congress aware of this iceberg of AI being used for pornography and the perpetuation of pornography.
Okay, thanks. Congress is aware, and once again, we're taking on enormously powerful interest in terms of people who own these platforms. All right, on that rather depressing thought, that just adds to another problem. We have the impact of social media on our lives. And ironically, social media is supposed to connect us all together, yet the studies out there is it creates more loneliness because we don't have that human contact. Everyone's on their phones and all that stuff. So it's like, all right. So let me conclude. In a sense, the way I began. These are tough times for the country. This issue of AI and online pornography and all that stuff is just another issue out there. But what I'm begging all of you is we need you desperately. Don't give up. Don't turn to despair. We can do it. This country has gone through tough times before. And even though these problems seem insurmountable, they are not. If we create a government that is sensitive and cares for the needs of ordinary people rather than just the people on top, we can accomplish great things. We really, really can, and move pretty quickly. So let's stand strong, let's stand together, let's not let our opponents divide us up, and let's go forward and again create the kind of nation you and I know we can become. Thanks all for coming.